Khamzat Chimaev made his UFC debut in July of 2020, and since then, the newcomer has done nothing but strike fear into the hearts of his fellow contenders. With punches that hold devastating knockout power and wrestling skills that leave fighters helpless and weak, the guy is an absolute savage. And with his repeated claims that he has come to kill everyone in his division, he's made no secret of what his intentions are. The Chechnyan-born 28-year-old fights out of Sweden and has had both welterweight and middleweight bouts in the UFC. Since his debut, he's racked up an impressive 6 wins in the UFC, while his professional record overall stands at 12 wins and 0 losses. Over the course of his first 4 fights in the UFC, Khamzat was hit twice. I mean, it's unheard of. Currently, he's ranked 3rd in the welterweight division. Pretty impressive for a guy with only 6 fights in the promotion, but Khamzat has made sure that every single one of them has left a deep impression on his opponent. Khamzat's style is an aggressive one. He wastes no time getting to action in the octagon, leading him to secure 4 of his 6 wins in the UFC within the first round. His unmatched pressure and aggressive style are daunting to other fighters. They know that as soon as those octagon doors close, they're locked in there with that monster of a man. It is on. We witnessed this in his last fight with Kevin Holland at UFC 279. If we put the controversy of missed weight and disrespect aside and look exclusively at the fight, it's clear to see why no one wants to fight this guy. Kevin the Trailblazer Holland is no joke. The welterweight mixed martial artist can boast 23 wins to his name. And standing at 6'3", he's not what you'd call a small guy. When the bell rang and the 2 fighters advanced, Khamzat immediately went for a takedown and proceeded to ragdoll Kevin for 2 minutes and 13 seconds, making him look like an amateur rather than the seasoned fighter he truly is, before finally submitting him. No one does that! There was no warm-up, no feeling out his opponent. Khamzat just goes straight for the kill. Aggressive and explosive.
To engage. Tonight's fight clock is back-to-back time action for the top of the UFC. Thomas watches it taking a licking and keep on ticking since 1854.
Hey, that was a fast takedown. Incredible. Well, I just started a new...
His opponents just can't seem to come to terms with the sudden pace that he insists on. Popular podcast host and UFC commentator Joe Rogan commented on the fight, saying that Khamzat must have been super confident that he would find and secure the submission, since maintaining that pace for round after round would have been impossible. The pressure and pace Khamzat chooses to use is simply a testament to his supreme confidence. It's almost like he's saying, "I know that I'm going to finish you this round." We witnessed Khamzat's pace before his bout with Lee the Leech Jingliang at UFC 267 in 2021. But as well as his indomitable pressure, Chimaev showcased his immense strength by picking up Lee and carrying him across the octagon, just to fling him to the ground in front of Dana White, the head of the UFC, so he could speak to him while he was fighting. That's gotta sting for Lee. Here you are, trying to beat this guy's brains out, and he's ragdolling you, trying to have a conversation with someone else. Khamzat ended up submitting the Leech via rear naked choke, putting him to sleep 3 minutes and 16 seconds into the round. Another first-round finish for the Swedish fighter. It seems he didn't come to take part, but to take over. Khamzat's wrestling skills are something to behold, and that's no surprise. Considering he's a 3-time Swedish national champion, fighters are also wary and fearful of his immense knockout power. It's rare that a fighter is gifted with the ability to put you to sleep with a submission and turn your lights out with one punch, but Khamzat can do both. He proved this in his middleweight bout with Gerald Meerschaert at UFC Fight Night in September of 2020. Despite threatening Gerald that he would choke him out at the press conference prior to the fight, when the bell rang and the fighters advanced, it took Khamzat 17 seconds to find an opening in poor Gerald's defense, sending a straight right down the middle and knocking his opponent out cold. It was the first punch that he threw in that bout, proving to any doubters that while Khamzat could take you down and drown you in deep waters, his hands also hold a touch of death. After 4 dominant performances in the UFC, Dana decided to test Khamzat against an opponent of a different level than those he'd faced before, and at UFC 273 in April of 2022, Khamzat Chimaev was scheduled to fight in the co-main event against the, at the time, second-ranked welterweight in the world, Gilbert Burns. It was definitely a step up for the newcomer. Going from an opponent like Li Jingliang, who's ranked in the top 30, to fighting an opponent in the top 5 is no joke, and many doubted his ability to pass this tough test. Burns is a formidable fighter with a record of 25 wins and 5 losses. Gilbert is one of the few fighters to have wobbled the former welterweight champion Kamaru Usman, and he isn't the type to just sit back and take a beating. Khamzat and Burns were scheduled to fight for 3 rounds, and the pair took the fight all the way to the end, putting on an absolute show for the fans that watched. The fight earned the title Fight of the Night. Each fighter pocketed a tidy $50,000 bonus for their efforts. Burns has been the only opponent we've seen be able to match Khamzat's intensity and pressure. Khamzat scored a knockdown in round 1, while Burns managed to take down the Swedish wrestling champ in round 2. And in round 3, the pair duked it out like a couple of Street Fighter brawlers. It was an amazing fight, and while too many it proved that Khamzat was human, it also gave him a chance to showcase his ability to take a punch, as well as his unstoppable willpower and determination to win. Even after being wobbled, Khamzat dropped to his knees and immediately went for a takedown. Now, while the stats do show that Burns outstruck Chimaev, landing 118 strikes compared to Khamzat's 108, the judges still scored the fight for Chimaev, and he walked away with a win via unanimous decision. Fighting Burns gave Khamzat the opportunity to put his devastating skills on display against a top-ranked opponent. He's taken the place of third-ranked welterweight in the world, while Gilbert has been bumped down to 5th. It's clear to see that the ranking commission believes he's a serious problem for anyone in the division. Khamzat has proven himself to be a fighter with devastating knockout power. He has elite wrestling skills that leave his opponents powerless to defend themselves, and the heart of a warrior that just won't stop in the face of defeat. After making so much noise for his dominant victories in his first 4 fights, beating the number 2 ranked welterweight in the world and ragdolling Kevin Holland to the point it was almost disrespectful, I think fighters would be crazy not to be afraid of this guy. And while his recent debacle at UFC 279 has called into question his ability to continue making weight at 170 pounds, I'm sure that at middleweight or welterweight, Khamzat Chimaev will be gunning for that championship belt and struggle to find a fighter who's willing to fight him.